Hello, and welcome to Celebration of Mind at Stanford. Wonderful to see all of you here this evening. Welcome to an exciting journey of mathematics, art, magic, and more. Our first presenter tonight is going to be Alexa Meade, whose creative art form produces a 2D illusion in a 3D world. Her innovative approach has gained her worldwide acclaim with major exhibitions internationally. Alexa has collaborated with scientists, mathematicians, magicians, as well as music pop star Ariana Grande. Alexa also uses her art to influence social good, for example, in her collaboration on the experimental short film titled Color of Reality, which earned CNN's Artist Impact Award. Alexa's influence continues to grow and expand. Gardner's spark is definitely there. I'm always excited to see what she has to say next. So please join me in welcoming Alexa Meade.
I paint pictures of people, but I don't paint them on canvas. I paint them directly on top of the people that I'm trying to represent. Everything that's in this space gets covered in a mask of paint that makes the world appear to be a two-dimensional painting. Now, a lot of people wonder how I came up with this idea, where did I go to art school? And I have to say that I'm primarily a self-taught artist. I used to like making art when I was in high school, but I was always too perfectionistic. I could never finish anything. And in this color pencil self-portrait, I just kept on messing up the eyes. I kept on trying over and over again to get it right until the point that I broke through the paper with my colored pencil on both eyes and then taped paper to the back of it and kept trying again, and yet still could never be happy with it. And I didn't think that I had any chance of being an artist, so this didn't really seem like that big of a deal. It was just a very early indicator that this was not a career path for me. I was very certain that what I wanted to do would have to be running for political office someday. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I was absolutely obsessed with politics. I'd interned on Capitol Hill for 4 summers. I did press for the Obama campaign in 2008. And I had this really neat, narrow path laid out for me. I was finishing up my senior year at Vassar College, getting my degree in political science, when I realized all of a sudden that, okay, what if this thing that I thought was my dream, I no longer felt inspired by? And now what? And it was absolutely terrifying, but also at the same time somewhat liberating. All options were on the table, all were equally implausible and had the same rate of failure, so it seemed. And I decided, okay, I'm going to start my new life over, and I'm going to be a furniture designer. I spent my time learning how to woodwork, learning how to weld, and I was doing all of this in the sculpture facilities at my college. In order to have access to the facilities, I had to be enrolled in a studio art class, and I decided to take sculpture. One day, the teacher gave us a homework assignment. We needed to make a sculpture about a landscape that was not a sculpture of a landscape. This made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I tried to ask the professor to clarify. He refused to. I had to just figure it out on my own. And the solution that I came up with was thinking about, okay, what if I were to describe the landscape through the shadows on the ground? I thought this was absolutely brilliant. My professor, not at all interested. I ended up having to do something else to satisfy the assignment. I ended up making a cardboard house, and he thought it was the greatest thing ever. But this idea really stuck with me. And I decided a week before graduating with my degree in political science that I would do an experiment on my friend Bernie. I painted on him a mapping of the light, the shadow, and I realized that something very weird was happening on my camera. I thought my camera was broken. It didn't make any sense to me. When I graduated from college the following week and went back to Washington, D.C., I decided not to get a job on Capitol Hill, much to the chagrin of my parents and very much bucking the trend of all my peers who were graduating from college and going off to get real jobs. I made it my job to teach myself how to paint in my parents' basement. And I didn't want to practice by painting on canvas. I wanted to practice painting on physical objects to be able to capture their depth. And so my early subjects included things like grapefruit, which had issues of the acid eating through the underside of the paint, or an egg. And I realized that in this style of painting I was developing, it was the perfect niche for me too, because if previously I was never able to finish a painting because I was overly perfectionistic, I had to keep coming back to it, keep on overworking it, this forced me to work fast. I would oftentimes practice painting on myself since, again, my friends had jobs. And then when I wanted to find people who weren't me to practice on, I found a retired man. These subjects ended up being just the most interesting people, far more interesting than if I had painted on canvas. Part of what really inspires me about this work is the breaking within the plane of 2D and 3D. It's like this visual paradox. This short film, Color of Reality, was a collaboration with John Bogue's Lil Buck. The short film ends up being about gun violence. I obviously can't play all of it here. I encourage you guys to look that up. But another project I did in collaboration with an artist was with Sheila Vand, where we got a swimming pool filled with milk, and then I would paint on Sheila, and she would go in the milk, and we would find all the most amazing things would happen. The milk would start out as a totally clean blank white canvas, and then moments later it would completely evolve. Colors would form and swirl all around her body in the most unpredictable patterns. And we just had so much fun experimenting, seeing where this could take us. Recently, I was asked by Ariana Grande's team if I could recreate this look with the pop star. I painted her in a giant pool of milk. And I should note, it was not milk, it was a vegan milk substitute. This ended up going worldwide, global, all over the place. It was interesting to see how people were reinterpreting this look themselves. They took this seed of inspiration and were painting themselves in a bathtub. It became all sorts of fodder for people. It's my favorite. Hashtag God is a shrimp bisque. This is something that my mind could have never come up with, and I love just seeing how creativity flies in all these different directions. Now, making artwork that sometimes ends up going viral or ends up in places in front of a lot of people puts a lot of pressure on me, and sometimes it feels threatening to try to create something new or innovate outside of these bounds I've already created. And so I find so much value in just playing and creating projects that you don't expect anyone to really see, but there's just something about it that really tickles your imagination. And so that's why I live in a fun house. Everything in my house is some sort of weird optical illusion that I'm developing. It's like my test kitchen for new ideas. As you enter the home, you see this welcome sign, but you'll notice it's in a mirror because it's a reflection of a sign that's backwards that says Emaclue. You're metaphorically going through the looking glass when you enter my home. Mirrors are set up everywhere. My bathroom sign is one V shape, reflects to become a W, reflects again to become an M. And then one of the most fun things with mirrors in the house is this Periscope system that's set up. While lying in bed, I can see out of every window in the house at the same time as the light zigzags, bends around corners. And some people have said that I must be paranoid and this is some weird surveillance system. But it's actually a way of doubling the amount of windows in your house and getting a whole lot of natural light. I do all of these fun, weird side projects that I don't expect to really be anything other than just the fun of creating them. I find that they oftentimes will feed back into my main body of work and allow me to create things that I wouldn't have been able to get to if I hadn't first done all those dabblings off to the side. And that's a true window back there. That's the beach. I love that because it feels like it's a photo on the wall of a painting, but that's reality through there. And then my kitchen breakfast nook totally transforms. Everything folds away, and it turns into a disco, complete with lasers, there's a fog machine, color-changing lights. It's crazy having a party in your kitchen for breakfast, where wristbands are required for entry. But it also inspires me to make art around that. There's this sign that I made that says, no, there, nowhere. But when you add on the lights, it appears to animate as different parts of the words pop out. And I thought, what else can I do with color-changing lights and colored paint? I thought about this mathematical concept of the Necker cube illusion, where with a wireframe cube, it's ambiguous what side is the front and what side is the back. And so I decided to see if I could, with paint, make the front and back of the cube fade back and forth. I get a lot of inspiration from old illusions that I find too, like the Necker cube. One of them was from World War I. Military ships were painted in these crazy zebra patterns, and this was called dazzle camouflage. It made it impossible for the enemies to tell which direction the ship was going in, how fast it was going, and so it was incredibly hard to hit these targets, because even though they were so loud, they were essentially hiding in plain sight. And I wanted to try to use that as a means of making a three-dimensional space two-dimensional. for the 29 Rooms exhibit. People got to put on all of these different types of invisibility cloaks to completely blend into the background. And you may notice that woman there, but did you notice the man who's taking her photo? And of course, being obsessed with color and color change, I had to, after hours, see what happens with that. The funhouse is filled with all sorts of trapdoors, hidden secrets, surprises, and it really keeps me limber, having to essentially navigate through an obstacle course to get through my kitchen. It's very easy to get lost, so that's why I made this map. That you're seeing is not just the floor plan of the house, but also the ceiling plan and the wall plan. So if you were to flat pack the three-dimensional form of my house, this is how it would all lay out. And this map is very important because there's all sorts of surprises, such as in the bathroom closet. There's neon spandex hanging down. And then when you put on these special glasses, it turns the world to rainbows. And it feels like colors touching you all over your face and body. And it's almost like synesthesia. This also doubles as a guest bedroom. I've been told by guests that they've had nightmares here that spiders were crawling all over their face because of the spandex just slapping against them at weird times in the night. This neon spandex has, again, managed to influence my main body of work. I was recently asked to paint the trees in New York City. Everything was going full steam ahead when all of a sudden the Parks Department stepped in and said, "You are not allowed to put paint on trees." But I realized if I just wrapped the trees in spandex, then I could make a really nice snug fit. Because of my bathroom closet, trees on Bleecker Street in Greenwich Village are all hyper-colored beautiful. My bathroom medicine cabinet is ye olde gifty shoppy. And you can tell that this is a place for serious commerce by this sales tax license. So I am officially allowed to collect money for things sold here. And being a funhouse, I had to be innovative in payment processing. This is the original tablet card reader. And if you feel uncomfortable paying by tablet, I understand. I've also designed my own currency, and I call this the UpDown Coin. So you'll see it's UP for up, and then if you rotate it around, it becomes down. And so it's both up and down on the same face of the coin. So at all times, it's both up and down on all faces at once. I thought this was kind of cool. I try explaining it to people. They don't really get it. But then when I brought this to the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics, where I was artist in residence, these scientists were like, "Oh my God, I'm a quantum physicist, and it's impossible to explain to people quantum states, and this is a qubit. This is perfect." So because I have a gift shop in my bathroom, now these theoretical physicists have a tool for teaching about qubits. I want to talk about a collaboration with my friend Henry Segerman, who is also a speaker here. We created this optical illusion where we have these lines that appear to be straight that we painted in, but this is actually from a 360 spherical camera. And so all these lines that appear parallel all converge in the center where the eye of the camera is. And that means that if you're walking in circles around the camera, it appears like you're going in a totally straight line and like you're walking off the edge of the Earth and then coming back through the other side. I love playing with all sorts of different mathematical concepts, again, totally unrelated to painting. One day I was drawing overlapping circles, and I thought, okay, what if I cut out along the edges of these arcs? And I realized you can create really cool tessellations where everything fits together in this magical way. And I thought, wow, I am a genius. I invented something. I rushed and I filed a patent for it. And then I learned that in 1904, somebody beat me to it, patented this exact concept. And that was a little disheartening, but it's still, I was so inspired and so excited about how these shapes fit together. And I wanted to see what else I could do with them. Can I make them giant, like as if they're a floor mat? So I have this treasure trail that you can totally rearrange to make an area rug. And then scaling it down to a smaller size, I was able to have bath toys. I actually wanted to play with tessellations in the bath. And it was really cool because as the water would slosh around, the shapes would go farther apart, and then they would come together, and they would find each other and spontaneously form tessellations in the water. And then I thought about other bodies of water that I could put tessellations in, and I settled upon breakfast cereal. And you might be asking, what do you have a life? Why would you be making tessellating breakfast cereal? And the answer is, I don't know, but it really excites me. And so a similar area of obsession is with Braille. Several years ago, I started learning how to read Braille. And then I started thinking, OK, what if you were to take certain Braille letters and mirror them, and they form other letters backwards? Could you make palindromes out of Braille, where something reads one way in Braille, and then it's mirrored, it turns into something else? And I found a couple of words. Ice backwards in Braille is ice. Rid becomes few. And then my absolute favorite one was the word fixed. Fixed backwards in Braille is fixed. That is mind-blowing, right? It's fixed. No one really finds it that interesting, but I really get off on this. So anyways, I'm obsessed with Braille, but I've been dismayed because there's nowhere that I can practice reading it. The only instances I find of Braille in the wild are an ATM machine, an elevator, a bathroom. And so I decided that if I'm really going to be pursuing Braille, I need to have things to read other than a pin pad. And I, at that point, went to the Braille Institute in Los Angeles, and I went to the library and checked out some interesting reading material. This is Playboy magazine in Braille, so you can actually say you're reading it for the articles and not be lying. And then since my foot was already in the door there, I ended up volunteer teaching a paper mache class for the blind. And one of my students is this man, Chris Cook, who's both deaf and blind, and he is the most prolific artist. And he's such an inspiration to me. And I asked him, where do you keep all of this artwork that you make? And he told me it was in his home and that I should come see it. So I went to visit him at his house. And I found the most amazing displays of thousands of pieces of art that he had created and set up to make his own town in his apartment. And he can't see any of this, and he's had no help putting it together, which is absolutely remarkable. He has hot air balloons and rocket ships. I mean, that's something that the Funhouse does not yet have. He has all of these scenes set up that make so much sense. And there's this entire inner world that he has been able to visually manifest and make real. It just flows out of him. I got together with my friends, and we decided to put on an art exhibit of his work. We made a show that was accessible to the visually impaired. And so there were people there who came who were blind, who were deaf and blind, and all the work was meant to be picked up, touched, and felt. All signage was in print as well as in Braille, so that no one was left out. It was a really incredible experience for visually impaired people who thought that they never had any reason to go to an art gallery. And then now this was a show that was meant just for them. After the opening, Chris sent me a note, and in it said that this show really opens a very happy door in the creative world to the public. If a door could feel something for an artist, it should be happiness. And that idea just hit me in this really weird way. I've never thought of a door as something that could have feelings. And that's also where I get so much of the value from collaboration, is encountering these other minds that are completely unlike my own. And I think about these happy doors of, because I wanted to make Braille palindromes, now all of a sudden this deaf and blind man has a solo art exhibition that other visually impaired people can come to and appreciate. And I didn't think that I would become an artist. I'd studied politics. I thought I just didn't have what it took. And it was just a happy door and an accident that I fell into obsession with shadows, and I wanted to see where that would take me. And then all of these side journeys with the Funhouse, turning into things that weave into my main body of work, have really shown me that you never know when a happy door is being opened. But if you're feeling inspired and curious and want to follow your heart into something, I fully encourage you to do so. Thank you.